Do you think golf is a clean, gentlemanly sport without cheating? Get ready to change your mind. Today, you're going to discover the most shameless frauds, the most surreal plays, and the most controversial acts of cheating that have shaken the golf world. From live deceptions in front of millions of viewers to penalties that ruin careers forever. These are the 20 biggest cheating scandals in golf history. And I warn you, some of these players did things you wouldn't even dare to imagine. Number 20. Memphis. WGC FedEx Street Jude Invitational. Bryson DeChambeau, one of the most eccentric characters on the tour, finds himself in trouble after his tee shot on the 7th hole. The ball ends up near a tree, in a tricky position. But what happens next borders on the absurd. He approaches the ball, studies the ground, and suddenly raises his hand to call for a referee. A snake? A wasp nest? Some kind of dangerous animal? No. An ant? Yes, you heard that right. Bryson tries to invoke Rule 16, TUA, which allows relief if there's a danger from harmful animals. Venomous snakes, alligators, or, apparently, a lone ant. The referee can't believe it. The argument drags on for nearly 3 minutes, turning into one of the most surreal exchanges ever seen in professional golf. It's a different color, insists Bryson, pointing to the ground, as if he were facing a deadly scorpion. The referee stands firm. No relief granted. Bryson plays the ball as it lies, and walks away with a double bogey that probably hurt more than any sting. Microscopic cheating attempt. Failed. But not everyone has been so obvious. Because what the next player did truly left a mark. Number 19. We go back to 2008, to the first chapter of a story full of controversy. Patrick Reed, one of the most debated names in modern golf, was already showing signs long before turning professional. He arrives at the University of Georgia with high expectations, but his time there was more chaotic than promising. First, problems with alcohol, 2 infractions and an arrest for underage drinking and carrying a fake ID. But that was nothing compared to what came next. In the team's locker room, things started disappearing. A watch, a putter, and $400 in cash. And what happened the next day? Reed showed up on campus with a thick wad of bills in his pocket. Coincidence? Hard to believe. But what truly set off the alarms was this. During a qualifying round, his ball lands in the rough bad position. When his teammates go to find it, they discover it mysteriously closer to the fairway, as if it had moved itself to a better spot. Reed denied everything, without hesitation, but the suspicions were already planted. The result? Expelled from the team and forced to transfer to Augusta State. And the worst part is that this pattern didn't stop there. The accusations would follow him for years, even on the professional circuit. And if you think that's bad, wait until you see what happened in Jakarta in 2005, because what Colin Montgomerie did was anything but an innocent mistake. Number 18. Indonesia, 2005. Second day of the Jakarta Open. Colin Montgomerie is competing. Everything goes as usual until an apparently routine situation triggers one of the most silent and long-lasting scandals of his career. Midway through the round, the weather turns, play is suspended, and the players must leave the course. Nothing unusual. But when they return, Montgomerie faces a problem. His ball is gone. No markings. No witnesses. So he simply replaces it where he thinks it was. Or at least, that's what he claims. What he didn't know was that the cameras were rolling. And when the footage was reviewed, it became clear. The new position was cleaner, more favorable, and not the original. A few centimeters of difference. But in golf, that can change everything. Penalty? None. He finished the tournament, collected £24,000, and left. But the suspicions grew, and Montgomerie, perhaps to calm the waters, made an unexpected move. he donated his entire prize to charity, a noble gesture, or an attempt to clean up his image. The real impact came 4 years later. In 2009, his direct rival for the Ryder Cup captaincy, Sandy Lyle, broke his silence. He publicly accused him of cheating. Thus, what were once rumors became accusations. And although he was never officially sanctioned, his reputation was never the same again. Because in this sport, there are mistakes that not even donations can cover. And, speaking of mistakes, the next one, at the 2010 PGA Championship, cost a player his first major. Number 17. Sunday afternoon. PGA Championship at Whistling Straits. Dustin Johnson is one hole away from making history. He's on fire. Birdies on 13, 16, and 17. He steps onto the 18th tee with a one-shot lead. He's playing the best golf of his life. He just needs to finish strong, and the title will be his. His drive drifts slightly right and lands in a trampled area of dirt cups, cans, and footprints everywhere. Nothing unusual after a week of thousands of spectators walking around. Dustin focuses, sets his club, swings. Everything seems fine. Until he's stopped as he leaves the green. 2-stroke penalty. The reason? A very specific and rarely remembered local rule of the course. Every sandy area, without exception, was considered a bunker. Even those that looked like dry dirt. Even the ones where spectators had been standing all week. Even the one where he unknowingly grounded his club. And just like that, from being one step away from his first major, he falls to 5th place. Was it cheating? No. But in this game, ignorance of the rule doesn't save you either, because the rule book doesn't care about context. And the smallest mistake can cost you a trophy. And if you think that was harsh, wait until you hear what happened in Jakarta in 1985. Because a young talent nearly lost everything before he even got started. Number 16. Jakarta, 1985. A young Vijay Singh, only 22 years old, is trying to break through on the Asian circuit. The pressure is immense. There's no margin. He needs to make the cut. He needs points. He needs money. He needs a chance. He finishes the second round. His scorecard leaves him one shot away from missing the cut. And for someone without a name or sponsors, that means no paycheck, no ranking, no future. But then, something changes. Between his final putt and the moment he hands in his card, his score improves by exactly 1 stroke. Exactly enough to make the cut. Too precise to be a coincidence. The tournament officials didn't believe it for a second. The evidence was enough. Singh was suspended indefinitely from the Southeast Asian Tour. His career on the brink of collapse. Years later, he managed to rebuild himself. He fought on smaller tours, traveled through Europe and Africa, and rebuilt his name, shot by shot. But at that moment, everything pointed to his story ending before it had even begun. Number 15. BMW Masters, 2013. Simon Dyson faces a routine putt on the 8th hole. Everything seems normal, but within seconds, his reputation crumbles. He marks his ball, and just before placing it back, he uses the marker to press down a small indentation on his putting line. An almost imperceptible gesture. But in golf, that's strictly forbidden. It doesn't matter if the mark is tiny. It doesn't matter if it's barely noticeable. Altering the surface of the putting line is illegal. And in the era of high-definition TV, no movement goes unnoticed. A viewer saw it from home, reported it, and the scandal exploded. Dyson defended himself, claiming it was an involuntary gesture, that there was no intent. And the judges believed him. But even so, the punishment was harsh. 2 months of suspended suspension, a £30,000 fine, and £7,500 in costs. Conscious cheating? Maybe not. But in golf, once that word appears, there's no turning back. And if you think that was excessive, wait for what's next. Because the following case completely divided the elite of women's golf. Number 14. We're looking at what many consider the biggest cheating scandal in the history of women's golf. A case so tense it split the LPGA into two factions and left wounds that would take years to heal. Year 1972. Jane Blalock dominates the tour. She's number one on the money list, winning everything in sight. But while the trophies pile up, so do the suspicions. This wasn't just a rumor. Dozens of players were convinced Blalock was cheating, systematically improving her lie on the course and incorrectly marking her ball on the green. Everything exploded at the Bluegrass Invitational in Louisville. After the second round, the LPGA Executive Committee called her in, disqualified her, and fined her $500. But her fellow players weren't satisfied. 27 players signed an affidavit demanding harsher penalties. The response? A one-year suspension and a freeze on her earnings, about $50,000. A huge amount for that era. The most controversial part: there were no videos, no physical evidence, no photos. Only the word of other players. Blalock always maintained her innocence. But it was too late. The damage was done. What followed was an internal war that destroyed friendships, bred mistrust, and left a deep scar in women's golf. Number 13. Canadian Women's Open, Canadian Pacific Women's Open. Final hole of the second round. Chela Choi prepares for a short putt. The usual routine: mark, clean, replace, sink it. But this time, the usual changes everything. The cameras catch something subtle, almost imperceptible. When she replaces the ball, she doesn't put it back in exactly the same spot. We're not talking about meters, not even centimeters, millimeters. A tiny difference that, in almost any other sport, would go unnoticed. But in golf, precision isn't optional, it's sacred. The referees review the replay. Verdict: two-stroke penalty. And that's when the most surprising part begins. Chela was right on the cut line. Those two strokes put her out of the tournament. And then, she made a decision that left everyone in shock. She refused to accept the penalty. The rule is clear. Anyone who refuses the sanction is automatically disqualified. And that's exactly what happened. Pride, conviction, denial, no one knows for sure. But from that moment on, her name was etched into the history of women's golf. Number 12. Open Championship 2003, Royal Street, Georges. Mark Rowe, a veteran of the tour, has just signed the round of his life. 67 strokes. One of the best scores of the day. He's just 2 shots off the lead. He has a real chance to fight for a major. He's living the dream. Until one absurd detail destroys it all. Before the round begins, he and his playing partner, Jesper Parnevik, forget something basic: to exchange scorecards. Both record their scores correctly, but on each other's cards. They don't realize it until after signing and handing them in at the scoring area. And in golf, the rules are clear. A signed scorecard with the scores on the wrong card means automatic disqualification. No cheating, no advantage, just a careless mistake. And so, what could have been the most epic chapter of his career turned into a bureaucratic nightmare. Mark Rowe was eliminated for not exchanging a piece of paper. An innocent error that stole his greatest opportunity. Number 11. Yes! Patrick Reed again. The name that comes up most often when we talk about golf controversies. And it's no coincidence. This time, it all happens during the third round of a tournament, in a waste bunker. The ball lies badly. Tough shot. Bad luck. But what Reed does next is anything but accidental. During his practice swings, he moves sand directly behind the ball. Twice. And here, there's no gray area. Even though in this type of bunker, you're allowed to ground your club, you cannot move sand to improve your lie. That's cheating. No discussion. The penalty: 2 strokes. What would have been a bogey became a triple bogey. and it knocked him out of contention for the lead. But the real impact was something else. His already damaged reputation hit rock bottom. The scandal exploded online. The golf world split in two. Brooks Koepka didn't hold back, accusing him of building sandcastles. And other players made it clear that this wasn't the first time Reed had interpreted the rules his own way. Reed's response? You just have to let things roll off your back. Easy to say when you're already the most criticized player on tour. Because in this sport, once you're labeled a cheater, it's almost impossible to shake it off. Number 10. Senior PGA Championship, 2019 French Lick, Indiana. Leanne Walker, a former professional who hadn't played since 2011, was making her return to competition. But that comeback turned into a historic nightmare. That same year, the rulebook had changed. Caddies were no longer allowed to stand directly behind the player while she aligned her shot. A clear rule. But apparently, no one told Walker. Throughout her entire first round and part of the second, her caddy stood right behind her on nearly every putt, just as they'd done for years. No one said a word until the 14th hole of the second day. Her playing partners noticed and alerted the officials. What followed was surreal. The officials reviewed every hole she had played, and the verdict was a record no one ever wants to break. 42 penalty strokes in the first round, 16 more in the second. Total, 58 penalty strokes. Her original scorecards of 85 and 74 became 127 and 90. Yes, 127 inches a professional round. Not for bad play, not for lack of skill, but for not knowing a new rule. A colossal penalty that likely remains the highest ever imposed in professional golf. Number 9. Kia Classic, 2010. Michelle Wie is in the middle of a fight for the title. Everything's going well until one single shot changes everything. Hole 11. Her ball ends up in the water. Nothing unusual. It happens to anyone. But Michelle refuses to give up. Instead of taking the drop, she decides to go for it in a move that drew a roar from the crowd. She steps into the water, 1 foot submerged, plants herself in the mud, and goes after the ball. The scene is epic. Michelle versus the elements. Extreme golf. And she pulls it off. Almost. The ball barely moves, but it comes back into play. It's something, at least. And just when it seems she's escaped trouble, she makes the mistake. Her club touches the ground inside the hazard. By instinct, by reflex, by accident. Doesn't matter. That's an automatic penalty. 2 strokes. Goodbye tournament. Goodbye victory. All for a mistake so small, yet so devastating. She was out of contention, frustrated, and left with one of the most debated excuses in women's golf history. But hey, at least the white skirt survived the splash. Number 8. Lexi Thompson is on the verge of winning her second major. She's playing flawless golf, leading confidently. Everything points to victory. Until an email changes the course of the tournament. A random viewer, sitting on their couch at home, is watching a replay of the previous day. On the 17th hole, they notice something, a slight movement, as Lexi replaces her ball. Nothing dramatic, not even obvious. But they rewind, watch again, and again. Then, they decide to write to the LPGA, accusing Lexi of replacing the ball slightly out of position. Officials review the footage and confirm it. The ball wasn't placed exactly in the same spot. But the worst part isn't that. The complaint came the next day, after Lexi had already signed her scorecard. The result? 2 strokes for misplacing the ball, 2 more for signing an incorrect scorecard. 4 strokes in total. Lexi went from leading by 1 to trailing by 3. The victory slipped away in seconds. The golf world erupted. Angry players, outraged fans, and one question still without a clear answer. Should a viewer at home have the power to change the outcome of a professional tournament? For Lexi, it didn't matter. The damage was done. and her case became one of the most controversial rulings in golf history. Number 7. 1983. Skins Game. A tournament with $120,000 at stake, more than many official events at the time. Every shot was worth gold. The tension was palpable. And in the spotlight, two living legends, Tom Watson and Gary Player. It all came down to one crucial chip. Player prepares. Watson watches. And then, something doesn't seem right. Gary moves a leaf that's sitting just behind his ball. Here, the rulebook leaves no room for doubt. If the leaf is loose, no problem. But if it's stuck to the ground, moving it is illegal. In other words, improving your lie is cheating. Watson, a staunch defender of the rules, is convinced Player crossed the line. Player insists the leaf was loose. There's no clear video, no definitive proof, just word against word. But by then, it wasn't just about money. It was about principle. Player walked away with $170,000. Watson, barely $10,000, and a resentment that lingered for years. Their friendship was never the same again. And to this day, many still ask the same question. Did Gary Player get away with it? Number 6. Masters Tournament. Augusta, 2013. Tiger Woods is in the thick of the fight for the green jacket. Second round, hole 15. Everything is going according to plan, until fate plays a cruel trick. Woods hits a perfect shot, but the ball strikes the flagstick dead on, bounces violently, and ends up in the water. A brutal break, but Tiger, with his trademark composure, drops another ball and plays again. He finishes the hole and continues his round as if nothing happened. Everything seems fine. Until, after the round, comes the interview. Woods, unaware of what he's about to unleash, says casually, "I dropped the ball 2 yards farther back to get a better angle." And that's when all hell breaks loose. According to the rules, the next shot must be played as close as possible to the original spot. 2 yards back is not as close as possible. By the time officials react, Tiger has already signed his scorecard. And that, by rule, means automatic disqualification. But this time, it didn't happen. The Masters Committee invoked a new rule allowing players to avoid disqualification if the violation stemmed from a prior error by the officials. Yes, they had already reviewed that drop before and approved it. The result? 2-stroke penalty. And Tiger stayed in the tournament. He finished 4 shots behind the champion, Adam Scott. But the real aftermath was different. The controversy never went away. Because for many, that day made one thing crystal clear. Tiger isn't judged by the same standards as everyone else. Number 5. Yes, Patrick Reed again. Third appearance on this list, and that's no coincidence. When we talk about golf scandals, his name always comes up. This time, it happens during the 3rd round, on the 10th hole. Reed hits his approach shot. The ball lands in the rough. When he gets there, he picks it up, claiming it was embedded. According to the rules, that gives him the right to a free drop. But there's one detail that changes everything. Replays show the ball bounced before settling into the rough. And in golf, a ball that bounces cannot be embedded. What happened next made things even more suspicious. Before calling the referee, Reed marks the spot, lifts the ball, and presses his fingers into the turf. By the time the official arrives, the ball is no longer in its original position. Reed explains that volunteers told him the ball hadn't bounced. But CBS aired the replay, and reality said otherwise. The ball had, in fact, bounced. Even so, Reed was granted the free drop. The scandal erupted. Fans, players, commentators, all outraged. Once again, talk of favoritism spread. His reputation took another hit. And a pattern that could no longer be ignored became undeniable. And Reed's response? At the end of the day, it's my word against theirs. Sure, Exactly what you'd expect to hear from someone with nothing to hide. Number 4. 2005 Samsung World Championship. Michelle Vie, just 16 years old, makes her professional debut. Expectations are sky high. Everyone's calling her the future queen of golf. But what was supposed to be a glorious beginning turns into a nightmare. Third round. Hole 7. Her ball lands in a bush. She has no choice. Takes an unplayable drop, recovers well, reaches the green, and saves par. Everything seems fine. Until Michael Bamberger, a Sports Illustrated journalist, steps in. He noticed something odd, said nothing at the time, waited until after the round, measured the drop point himself, and then started asking questions. Michelle explained her safety triangle, insisting she hadn't dropped closer to the hole. But Bamberger wasn't convinced. The next day, Michelle finishes tied for 4th place. She's ready to collect her first paycheck as a professional, $53,120. Then, the officials intervene. They review the exact drop location and determine the ball ended up about 30 centimeters, a foot, closer to the hole than allowed. Clear violation. Result: immediate disqualification for signing an incorrect scorecard. And just like that, her professional debut ends without glory, without money, and with a stain that's hard to erase. Was it an innocent mistake? Or something more? No one knows for sure. But one thing is certain: her first major headline wasn't the one she dreamed of. Number 3. Phoenix Open, 1,999. Tiger Woods is deep in the desert and finds himself in one of the most surreal situations ever seen on a golf course. His ball comes to rest right behind a massive rock nearly a ton in weight. Any other player would have accepted the lie and taken an unplayable drop. But Tiger isn't any other player. He has another plan. He calls for a rules official and asks a question that sounds like a joke. Is this rock considered a loose impediment? The official thinks for a moment and answers, yes. And that's when the show begins. Tiger doesn't touch the rock himself. He doesn't have to. He calls on several spectators from the crowd, and together they lift and move the boulder. Yes, a dozen fans acting as improvised groundskeepers, moving something that could probably qualify as a natural monument. Legal? Technically, yes. Within the spirit of the game? Well, that's where the debate begins. The scene was so absurd, so unforgettable, that today, that same rock has its own commemorative plaque at TPC Scottsdale. A moment that blended ingenuity, influence, and controversy. And it still leaves one lingering question. Why did no one call it cheating? Or maybe the referee was just a Tiger fan? Number 2. US Open, Shinnecock Hills. 3rd round. Phil Mickelson is suffering like everyone else. The greens are brutal, fast, impossible, treacherous. The entire tournament has turned into a test of mental endurance. But what happened on the 13th hole left everyone in absolute shock. Phil hits a downhill putt. The ball starts rolling, and it's clear. It's going to race past the hole, probably even off the green. So what does he do? The unthinkable. He runs after the ball, catches up to it, and hits it while it's still moving. Yes, really, as if he were playing mini-golf. A gesture that breaks one of golf's most sacred rules. The reactions were immediate. The golf world couldn't believe it. It wasn't just a technical violation. It was a slap in the face to the spirit of the game. And what did Mickelson say? He admitted he knew the rule, but preferred to take the 2-stroke penalty rather than let the ball roll away uncontrollably. Was it a desperate act or total disrespect? Depends who you ask. But on one thing, everyone agrees. Nothing like it had ever been seen before, and probably never will be again. Number 1, 2023. Ottawa Open, PGA Tour Canada, Justin Doden is fighting for the essentials, making the cut to get paid. But after a double bogey on the 18th hole, he knows he's out. There's no coming back. Or so we thought. Then, he makes the worst decision of his career. He erases the 7 on his scorecard and replaces it with a 5. 2 strokes fewer, just enough to sneak inside the cut line. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was cheating. Pure, cold, intentional. But golf is a sport of integrity. And in this game, cheating never stays hidden for long. His fellow players noticed something odd when they saw the results. The officials reviewed the card, and the evidence was undeniable. You could still see the faint marks of the original 7. Before the investigation was even complete, Doden quietly withdrew. He knew exactly what was coming. 3 days later, he posted a message that shook the golf world. I cheated. This does not represent who I am. I've let down my sponsors, my peers, my family, and myself. And just like that, his career was over. Not with an official suspension, not with a media storm, but with a confession. Latte, but honest. And there you have it. 20 true stories. 20 scandals that stained one of the cleanest sports on earth. From ants to one-ton boulders, from absurd mistakes to blatant frauds, golf isn't immune to controversy. Because in the end, what defines a player isn't their swing, it's what they do when no one's watching. Did any of these surprise you? Then subscribe now. Every week, we bring you the best and the worst of the golf world, told without filters. Leave us a comment with the scandal that shocked you the most. And if you liked this video, share it with someone who still thinks golf is boring. This is only the beginning. See you on the next shot.